I was standing just outside the bridal suite, my hands trembling around a plain white envelope I wasn't supposed to have. Inside that room, my daughter Olivia was laughing with her bridesmaids, glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. Then the door opened. Her eyes landed on the envelope, and everything changed. She rushed toward me, grabbed my wrist, and whispered so softly it barely existed, "Mom, please don't ruin my life again." Again. That word hit harder than anything she'd ever said to me. I looked down at the envelope, because whatever was inside, she was terrified I'd open it. And suddenly I didn't know if staying silent would destroy her, or finally save her. If you've ever been caught between protecting someone you love and losing them forever, you'll understand this story. Please subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? After my husband died, silence became the loudest thing in our house. Before that, our life had been ordinary in the best way. Sunday breakfasts, burnt toast that my husband insisted tasted better that way. Olivia rolling her eyes at our little rituals, but secretly loving them anyway. We weren't perfect, but we were whole. And then, in the span of a single night at a hospital, everything shattered. I remember holding his hand as the machines around him made those steady, indifferent sounds. I remember thinking if I just held on tight enough, if I just didn't let go, maybe he wouldn't either. But life doesn't work like that. He left. And when he did, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. But I didn't have the luxury of falling apart, not completely, because Olivia was still there, 16 years old, too young to lose her father, too old not to understand what it meant. So I made a decision. I told myself I would be strong for her. What I didn't realize was that strength can slowly turn into something else. At first, it was small things. I started checking if she locked the doors at night. I made sure she texted me when she got to school, when she left, when she arrived at her friend's house. I told myself it was normal. Any mother would do that right. But grief doesn't always look like sadness. Sometimes it looks like control. I began noticing every little risk in the world around her. Every news story about accidents, about bad choices, about people who trusted the wrong person. And each one planted a seed inside me, a quiet, growing fear that I could lose her too. I couldn't survive that. So I tightened my grip. When Olivia started applying to colleges, I didn't just help, I directed. I reviewed every application, questioned every choice, pushed her towards schools closer to home. I told myself it was practical, safe. She got into a university 3 states away. I remember the look on her face when she told me. It wasn't just happiness, it was freedom. And I felt something crack inside my chest. "You can't go that far," I said immediately. Her smile faded. "Mom, it's a great school." "I know, but what if something happens? You don't know anyone there. It's too far. What if you need me?" That was the moment I should have stopped, but I didn't. Because in my mind, needing me meant she was still safe. We argued for days, weeks even. It became a pattern, her pushing forward, me pulling back. Every conversation felt like a battle neither of us knew how to win. In the end, she went anyway, and I told myself I was being supportive. But the truth I called too often. I asked too many questions. I needed to know where she was, who she was, with what she was doing at all times. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't trust the world. At least that's what I believed. The first time she didn't answer my call, I panicked. I called again, and again, and again. By the 5th call, my heart was racing. By the 10th, I was imagining every possible worst-case scenario. Car accidents, strangers, hospitals. When she finally called me back, her voice was sharp. "Mom, I was in class. I didn't know that. You could have texted, I can't text during a lecture. Well, you could have told me your schedule." I did. There was a pause, a long, heavy pause. Then she said something that should have stopped me in my tracks. "You don't trust me." I opened my mouth to respond, but the words didn't come out right. "It's not about trust, Olivia. It's about control," she cut in. That word hung in the air between us. I wanted to argue, to explain, to make her understand that everything I did was out of love. But love, when it suffocates, doesn't feel like love anymore. And I didn't see that. Not yet. As the months passed, the distance between us grew not just physically, but emotionally. Our phone calls became shorter, our conversations more strained. She stopped telling me things, little things at first, then bigger ones. I found out about her changing majors through a forwarded email. I learned she had joined a club from a social media post. I wasn't part of her life anymore. And instead of stepping back, I pushed harder. Every time she pulled away, I reached further. Every time she built a boundary, I tried to cross it, because in my mind, letting go meant losing her, and I had already lost too much. The summer after her sophomore year, she came home for a few weeks. I remember watching her walk through the front door, suitcase in hand. She looked older, more confident, different, not mine in the way she used to be. I hugged her tightly, maybe too tightly. "I missed you," I said. She hugged me back, but it felt careful. "I missed you too, Mom." But something in her voice told me that wasn't entirely true. That summer should have been our chance to reconnect. Instead, it became the beginning of something breaking beyond repair. Because that was when I started noticing him, Ethan Blake. At first, he was just a name mentioned casually, a friend from school, a guy from one of my classes. But soon, he was everywhere. Text messages late at night, smiles Olivia tried to hide but couldn't. The way her eyes lit up when she talked about him, even when she tried not to. I knew that look. It was the same one I used to have when I talked about her father. And instead of feeling happy for her, I felt afraid. Because love meant vulnerability. And vulnerability meant risk. And risk meant loss. So I started asking questions. Too many questions. Who is he? What does he do? Where is he from? What are his parents like? At first, Olivia answered patiently, but with each question, her patience wore thinner. "Mom, he's just a guy. No one is just a guy." She sighed. "Why can't you just be happy for me?" I didn't answer. Because the truth, I didn't know how. All I could see were possibilities of things going wrong. And in trying to protect her from those possibilities, I was about to become the very thing that would hurt her the most. I didn't know it yet. But Ethan Blake wasn't just another chapter in her life. He was the moment everything between us would change, forever. Ethan Blake didn't walk into Olivia's life like a storm. He slipped in quietly, so quietly. In fact, that if I hadn't been watching so closely, I might have missed how deeply he had already rooted himself in her world. The first time I met him was during that summer Olivia came home. She had hesitated before introducing us, which should have been my first clue that something between us had already shifted. "Mom, this is Ethan," she said, her voice carrying a strange mix of pride and caution. He stood in our living room, tall, slightly nervous, dressed simply, jeans, a clean shirt, nothing flashy. His smile was polite, respectful. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. James," he said, extending his hand. I shook it, studying him carefully, too carefully. There was nothing obviously wrong with him. That was the problem. Because in my mind, danger didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it looked normal. Sometimes it smiled. We sat down for dinner together that evening, and I watched everything. The way he looked at Olivia, soft, attentive. The way Olivia laughed freely, effortlessly, in a way I hadn't heard in years. That laugh should have reassured me. Instead, it unsettled me. Because it meant she was giving a part of herself to someone else, a part that used to belong to me. So Ethan, I began keeping my tone neutral. "What are your plans after graduation?" Olivia stiffened slightly. Ethan didn't seem to notice. "I'm studying business," he said. "I want to start my own company someday." A company. I raised an eyebrow. That's ambitious. He smiled a little more cautiously this time. "I know. But I've been working part-time, saving up. I have a plan. A plan is good," I said, nodding slowly. "Execution is harder." Olivia shot me a look. "Mom," I ignored it. "And your family?" I continued. "What do they do?" Ethan hesitated just for a second. "They live in Ohio," he said. "My mom works in healthcare. My dad isn't around." There it was, a gap. something incomplete, and my mind immediately filled it with possibilities. After dinner, Olivia pulled me aside. "Can you not interrogate him like that?" she whispered sharply. "I was just asking questions. You were judging him. I was trying to understand him." "No," she said, shaking her head. "You were trying to find something wrong with him." Her words stung because they were true, but I wasn't ready to admit that. "I just want to make sure you're making good choices," I said, my voice tightening. "I am making good choices," she replied. "You just don't trust me to." That word again, trust. It echoed louder each time she said it. Over the next few weeks, Ethan became a regular presence in our home. He was polite, helpful even. He offered to fix a loose cabinet hinge, brought groceries once when Olivia mentioned we were low on supplies. On the surface, he was everything a mother should want for her daughter. But something inside me refused to settle. It wasn't anything concrete, just a feeling, a quiet, persistent unease. And instead of questioning that feeling, I followed it. I started paying closer attention, not just to what Ethan said, but to what he didn't say. I noticed how vague he was about certain details, how he avoided specifics when talking about his past, how he deflected questions about finances, about his family. It wasn't enough to accuse him of anything, but it was enough to make me dig. One afternoon, while Olivia was out, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at Ethan's name typed into the search bar. Ethan Blake. It was a common name. Too common. The results were scattered social media profiles, outdated posts, nothing concrete. But I kept searching, refining, cross-checking. Hours passed, and then I found something. A small article. Local news, buried under pages of irrelevant results. A story about a failed startup, financial mismanagement, and unpaid debts. One of the names listed was Ethan Blake. My heart started to race. I clicked through more links, piecing together fragments of information. It wasn't a major scandal, nothing that would make headlines for long, but it was enough. Enough to suggest instability, enough to suggest risk, enough to confirm the fear I had been carrying. I printed everything, every article, every mention, because now in my mind, this wasn't just suspicion, it was proof. That evening, when Olivia came home, I was waiting. We sat in the living room, the papers spread out on the coffee table between us. "What is this?" she asked, her brows furrowing. "Something you need to see." She picked up the top page, scanning it quickly. At first, her expression was confused. Then it hardened. "You went looking for this?" she asked slowly. "I needed to know who you're involved with. You had no right. I have every right," I snapped, my voice rising. "You're my daughter, and if this man is unstable—" "He's not unstable," she shot back. "That was a group project. It failed. That doesn't make him a bad person." "It shows poor judgment," I insisted. "It shows he tried something." Her voice cracked slightly, but she didn't stop. "You don't even know him. You decided who he was the moment you met him. I'm trying to protect you." "No," she said, standing up abruptly. "You're trying to control me. Again." That word hit harder this time. Again. "You're doing exactly what you did," before she continued, her eyes shining with anger. "Digging, interfering, deciding what's best for me without even asking what I want. I am asking, no, you're not listening." The room fell silent for a moment, the tension thick enough to choke on. Then she said the words that would stay with me forever. "You didn't just ruin things before Mom," she said, her voice trembling. "You humiliated me." I froze. "What are you talking about?" Her laugh was bitter. "You don't even remember, do you?" But I did. I remembered more than I wanted to admit, because this wasn't the first time I had crossed a line, and the last time, I hadn't just hurt her. I had broken something between us that never fully healed. And now, standing there with those papers in my hand, I was about to do it again. By the time Daniel Whitmore entered Olivia's life, I had already lost my place in it. Not completely, but enough that I was no longer the first person she called when something good happened. Not the one she ran to when she needed advice, not even the one she trusted with her full truth. I had become someone she managed, someone she kept at a careful distance, So when she told me about Daniel, it wasn't with excitement, it was with control. "I'm seeing someone," she said over the phone one evening, her tone measured, almost rehearsed. "That's nice," I replied, trying to sound casual, even though my chest tightened. "What's his name, Daniel?" "Daniel Whitmore." There was a pause, as if she was waiting for something. For my reaction, for my judgment, for my interference. I swallowed all three. "How did you meet him?" I asked gently. "Through work," she said. "He's established. Established." That word carried weight. A few weeks later, I understood exactly how much. I was invited formally, not warmly, to a dinner at a private restaurant downtown. The kind of place where the lighting is soft, the music barely audible, and every detail whispers money. I remember standing outside the entrance, adjusting my coat, suddenly aware of how out of place I might look. Not because I didn't belong in that world, but because I hadn't been part of Olivia's world for a long time. When I walked in, Olivia was already there. She looked different, confident, polished, almost like someone I didn't fully recognize anymore. And beside her stood Daniel. He was exactly what Olivia had described, and more. Tall, composed, effortlessly well-dressed. His presence filled the room without him needing to say much. When he smiled, it was controlled, practiced. "Mrs. James," he greeted, extending his hand. "I've heard so much about you." I shook his hand, studying his face carefully. "I hope only good things," I said. His smile didn't change. Of course, but there was something in his eyes. Something unreadable. Dinner was smooth, too smooth. Daniel knew exactly what to say, when to say it, how to say it. He asked polite questions about my life, my work, my interests, but never too deeply, always just enough to appear engaged. And Olivia. She watched him, not in the soft, open way she had once looked at Ethan, but in a way that felt careful, measured, as if she was aligning herself with him. At one point, I noticed how he answered a question directed at her. The waiter had asked Olivia about her preference for wine. Before she could respond, Daniel spoke. "She'll have the Chardonnay," he said smoothly. Olivia hesitated just for a fraction of a second, then nodded. "Yes, that's fine." It was such a small moment, barely noticeable, but it lingered with me. Because it wasn't just about the wine, it was about the way he assumed control, and the way she allowed it. As the evening went on, Daniel spoke about his business ventures, investments, partnerships, opportunities that sounded impressive even to someone like me who had learned to be cautious with appearances. Margaret Whitmore joined us halfway through dinner, Daniel's mother. If Daniel was controlled, Margaret was sharp. Her presence shifted the atmosphere immediately. She carried herself with the kind of confidence that didn't need to be proven, it expected to be accepted. "Kathryn," she said, her smile thin as she sat down, "it's nice to finally meet you." There was no warmth in her tone, only evaluation. "Likewise," I replied. She glanced at Olivia, then at Daniel, then back at me, as if assessing where I fit into a structure she had already decided on. "So what do you do?" she asked. I told her, briefly. She nodded, but her eyes had already moved on, dismissed. The rest of the dinner felt like a performance. Daniel played the perfect partner. Margaret played the approving, if distant, matriarch, and Olivia played the role expected of her. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something underneath it all wasn't right. Not wrong in a way you could point to, just off. When the dinner ended, Olivia walked me outside. For a moment, it was just the two of us again. "No Daniel, no Margaret, just my daughter and me. You were quiet tonight," she said. "I was observing," I replied. She sighed. "Please don't start." "I'm not starting anything," I said carefully. "I just want to understand him." "You don't need to understand him," she said. "You just need to respect my choice." "I do respect your choice," I insisted, "but respect doesn't mean I stop caring." She looked at me, then really looked at me, and for a moment I saw something flicker in her eyes. Doubt, fear, but it disappeared just as quickly. "He's good to me," she said firmly. I'm glad I replied, but something inside me whispered otherwise. A few months later, she called me again. This time, there was no hesitation. "Daniel proposed," she said. Just like that. No build-up, no excitement in her voice, just a statement. I paused. That's big news, I said slowly. And what did you say? She hesitated. Just long enough for me to notice. I said yes. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to steady myself. Are you happy? I asked quietly. Another pause. Yes, she said. But it didn't sound like certainty. It sounded like a decision. The engagement moved fast, too fast. Wedding plans were made within weeks. Venues booked, guest lists finalized, details arranged with a precision that felt less like celebration and more like execution. And I was included, technically, but not really. I received invitations, not conversations, updates, not involvement. Every time I tried to offer help, Olivia gently redirected me. It's handled. It's taken care of. You don't need to worry. That phrase again, you don't need to worry. But worrying was all I seemed to do, because the more I watched, the more I noticed. The way Daniel corrected her subtly in conversations, the way Margaret controlled every decision behind the scenes, the way Olivia smiled but rarely relaxed. And the more I noticed, the stronger that feeling grew, that something wasn't right. I tried to tell myself I was projecting, that my past mistakes were making me see danger where there wasn't any, that this was different, that I needed to trust her. But then one afternoon, just a few days before the wedding, something arrived at my door. A plain white envelope. No return address. Just my name written neatly on the front, Kathryn James. I held it in my hands, a strange chill running through me, and for a moment I considered not opening it. Because sometimes not knowing feels safer than the truth. But something inside me, the same instinct that had been whispering for months, told me I couldn't ignore this. Not this time. So I opened it, and everything changed. I didn't open the envelope right away. For a long moment, I just stood there in my hallway, staring down at my name written in careful, deliberate handwriting, too precise to be casual, too controlled to be emotional. It felt intentional, like whoever sent it wanted to make sure I took it seriously. I closed the door behind me, locked it, then walked slowly into the kitchen. The house was quiet, almost unnaturally, so as if it already knew something I didn't. I placed the envelope on the table and just looked at it, because deep down I already understood something. Nothing good ever comes in a plain white envelope with no return address. Still, my hands moved on their own. I slid a finger under the flap and tore it open. Inside, there were several documents. Not a letter, not a note, just evidence. The first thing I pulled out was a photograph. It showed Daniel. There was no doubt about that, but he wasn't alone. He stood beside a woman I had never seen before, close enough that their bodies touched his hand, resting on the small of her back in a way that was far too familiar to be innocent. They weren't just acquaintances. They were intimate. My chest tightened. I flipped the photo over, hoping almost irrationally that there would be some explanation written there. There wasn't. Just a date. 3 months ago. 3 months. My mind immediately began calculating. That was after he had already proposed to Olivia. I swallowed hard and reached for the next document. This one was a printed record bank transactions. Large transfers, repeated patterns, money moving from one account to another in amounts that weren't just unusual, they were alarming. And then I saw the names. Different women. Different accounts. The same receiving destination. Daniel Whitmore. A cold wave ran through me. This wasn't just infidelity, this was something else, something bigger. I continued digging through the contents, my heart pounding louder with every page. Legal documents, fragments of court filings, nothing fully intact, as if someone had carefully selected only the pieces that mattered. But there was enough. Enough to form a picture I couldn't ignore. A prior engagement, a broken contract, a woman who had filed a complaint but later withdrew it, and then another, and another. Different cities, different names, same pattern. Daniel entered their lives, built trust, created dependency, and then something happened. Something that always ended with him walking away, and them losing something, Money, reputation, control. I sat down slowly, the chair scraping faintly against the floor. My hands were shaking now, not just from fear, but from recognition, because this wasn't random. This was calculated. Whoever had sent this envelope hadn't just stumbled across this information. They had gathered it, organized it, delivered it to me. Specifically, there was only one question. Why me? And then the answer came almost immediately, because I was the only one who might actually listen. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the papers spread across the table. Olivia's face flashed in my mind, her smile, her forced confidence, the way she had said yes, the way she had told me not to ruin her life again. My chest tightened painfully, because now I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't just about me interfering. This was about her choosing to trust someone else, someone dangerous. And if I stepped in now, I risked losing her completely. Again. But if I didn't, I might lose her in a way that couldn't be undone. I pressed my hands against my temples, trying to steady my thoughts. Think. You need to think. I picked up the photograph again. Daniel's face stared back at me. Calm, confident, untouched by consequence. The man everyone admired. The man Olivia was about to marry. And yet behind that carefully constructed image, there was something else. Something cold. Something deliberate. I flipped through the documents again, slower this time, forcing myself to process every detail. One name kept appearing. Rachel Monroe. Unlike the others, her file was thicker, more complete. There was a partial statement unfinished, as if it had been cut off mid-sentence. I trusted him. He said we were building a future together. But then the accounts. It ended there. No conclusion. No resolution. Just silence. My heart ached reading it, because I could already imagine the rest. I had seen that kind of trust before. In Olivia. I pushed the papers away slightly, my breathing uneven. This was real, not speculation, not suspicion, proof. And suddenly the weight of the envelope felt unbearable. Because now the decision in front of me wasn't abstract anymore. It was immediate, concrete, dangerous. I could take this to Olivia. Show her everything, risk her anger, her rejection, her complete withdrawal from my life. Or I could stay silent. Let the wedding happen. Hope desperately that I was wrong, that somehow, despite all this, Daniel was different with her. But hope wasn't evidence, and I had evidence in front of me. I stood up abruptly, pacing the kitchen. No, I muttered under my breath. No, I can't just ignore this. But even as I said it, doubt crept in. What if this was a setup? What if someone was trying to sabotage Daniel? What if I walked into Olivia's life with this and destroyed everything again? That word echoed in my mind. Again. I stopped pacing, closed my eyes, and for a moment I saw Olivia as a little girl, holding my hand, looking up at me like I was the one person in the world who would always keep her safe. I promise I had told her once after a nightmare woke her in the middle of the night. Nothing bad will happen to you. I'll always protect you. At the time, it had been easy to say. Now, it felt like a responsibility I didn't know how to carry. Because protecting her now might mean hurting her, and I didn't know if she would ever forgive me for that. I walked back to the table and gathered the papers, slowly placing them back into the envelope. My hands were steadier now. Not because I felt calm, but because I had reached a realization I couldn't ignore. This wasn't about me anymore, not about my fear of losing her, not about my guilt over the past. This was about her safety, her future, her life, and if I stayed silent, I wouldn't just be a bystander, I would be complicit. I picked up my phone, hovered over her contact. My thumb trembled slightly. Call her, tell her, right now. But I didn't press it. Because something stopped me. Not fear, not hesitation, instinct. The same instinct that had been whispering to me for months. Be careful. I lowered the phone slowly. Because if this was true, if Daniel really was who these documents suggested, then going to Olivia without more proof might not just fail. It might push her deeper into his control. I needed more clarity, more certainty, more than just a folder of fragments. I looked at the envelope again, and for the first time, I realized something else. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same image, Olivia in her wedding dress, smiling at a man I now knew wasn't who he pretended to be. And behind that image, like a shadow I couldn't escape, was the memory of her voice. "Don't ruin my life again. Again." That word had become a weight I couldn't put down. By morning, the house felt smaller somehow, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. The envelope sat on the kitchen table where I had left it, silent and heavy with everything it contained. I poured myself coffee, but it went cold untouched, because every thought led back to the same question. What do I do now? I picked up my phone again. Olivia's name was right there. One tap and I could tell her everything. One call and I could stop this before it went any further. But my hand didn't move, because I already knew how that call would go. I had lived it before. I would start carefully choosing my words, trying not to sound accusatory. I would tell her I had concerns, that I had found something she needed to see, and she would hear none of it. She would hear judgment, control, interference. She would see me not as her mother trying to protect her, but as the woman who had once humiliated her, who had crossed a line she could never fully forgive, and just like before, she would shut me out. Maybe permanently this time. I set the phone down my chest, tightening. Think, I whispered to myself. There has to be another way. But every path I considered led to the same risk. If I said nothing, Olivia would marry Daniel, and if the documents were true, I would be watching her walk into something dangerous. But if I spoke too soon without enough proof, I might lose her before I could even reach her. I pressed my fingers against my temples, trying to quiet the noise in my head. That was when my phone buzzed. A message from Olivia. Dress fitting today at 2. Don't be late, no greeting, no warmth, just information. I stared at the screen for a moment. Even now, even after everything, she still expected me to show up, to play my role, to stand beside her as if everything was normal, as if I wasn't holding something that could shatter her world. I typed a response, then erased it, typed again, deleted again. Finally, I just wrote, "I'll be there," because no matter what happened, I wasn't going to disappear. Not this time. The bridal boutique was everything you'd expect. Soft lighting, white fabrics draped like clouds, mirrors that reflected every angle, every possibility. It should have felt magical. Instead, it felt like a stage. Olivia stood on the small platform in the center of the room, surrounded by her bridesmaids. The dress hugged her perfectly elegant and timeless. She looked beautiful. For a moment, everything else faded. All the fear, all the tension. It was just my daughter, my little girl, standing there about to step into a new life. "Mom," she called, noticing me in the doorway. I forced a smile and stepped forward. "You look incredible," I said honestly. Her expression softened just slightly. "Thank you." It was such a small exchange, but it felt like a fragile bridge between us, one I didn't know how to cross without breaking. The consultant adjusted the train of the dress, speaking softly about alterations and final fittings. The bridesmaids laughed, offering compliments, taking pictures, and I stood there watching, observing. Because even here, even in this moment that should have been pure joy, I saw it, the tension, the way Olivia's shoulders tightened when her phone buzzed, the way she glanced at the screen then quickly locked it again, the way her smile flickered just for a second before returning. Something wasn't right. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Is everything okay?" I asked gently. She nodded too quickly. "Yeah, why wouldn't it be?" I hesitated. Because this was it. A chance. A small opening. I could say something now. Not everything, just something. I began carefully. "I've been thinking. About you, about the wedding." Her body stiffened. "Mom, I'm not trying to interfere," I said quickly. "I just want to make sure you're happy. Really happy." "I am happy," she said, her tone sharpening. "I know you say that, but I don't just say it." She cut in her voice, low but firm. "I mean it." The room had grown quieter around us. Not silent, but aware. People could feel the shift. "I just want you to be sure," I said softly. "I am sure. And Daniel." She turned to face me fully now, her eyes flashing. "Stop." The word landed like a wall between us. "You don't get to do this again," she said, her voice trembling not with weakness but with restrained anger. "You don't get to question my choices, dig into my life, and then act like it's for my own good." "I'm not digging," I said, even though the words felt hollow the moment they left my mouth. Her laugh was short, sharp. "Really? Because that's exactly what it feels like." I swallowed hard. Because she wasn't wrong. Not entirely. "I just care about you," I said quietly. "I know," she replied, "but your version of caring, it hurts." That hit deeper than anything else she could have said. "I'm trying to do better," I whispered. "Then trust me," she said, "trust me." The same words. The same plea. But this time, I wasn't sure I could. Because trust in that moment felt like a risk I couldn't afford. Not when I knew what I knew. Not when the envelope was sitting in my bag just a few feet away. Heavy. Waiting. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a brief second, I saw it again. That flicker. Doubt. Fear. Something she wasn't saying. And it changed everything. Because suddenly this wasn't just about convincing her, it was about reaching her. Before it was too late. I took a small step back, forcing myself to breathe. "Okay," I said finally, "I'll drop it." She studied me suspicious. "Really, for now," I added softly, because the truth was, I wasn't dropping anything. I was just waiting for the right moment, the right proof, the right way to say it so she would finally hear me. Because if I did this wrong, I wouldn't get another chance. And as I watched her turn back to the mirror, adjusting her dress, trying to hold on to her perfect day, I realized something that made my chest tighten. She wasn't as certain as she wanted me to believe, and that meant I was running out of time. I told Olivia I would drop it, but that didn't mean I stopped looking. It just meant I became quieter about it, more careful, more deliberate. Because if Daniel Whitmore was exactly who those documents suggested, then walking in blindly wasn't just risky, it was dangerous. And I had already made one mistake in the past. This time, I wasn't going to act without understanding everything. The next few days, I paid closer attention, not in an obvious way. I didn't ask questions, I didn't push, I simply watched. It started with small observations, the kind most people would overlook. At a brunch with Olivia and a few of her friends, Daniel sat beside her, one arm casually draped behind her chair. To anyone else, it looked affectionate, but I noticed how his hand occasionally tightened. Not enough to hurt, just enough to remind, to signal. And every time it did, Olivia would adjust her posture, straightening slightly, her smile returning a second too late. Control. Subtle, but present. Later that same afternoon, I saw something else. Olivia's phone buzzed while she was in the restroom. The screen lit up briefly on the table. A message from Daniel. "Where are you?" 2 minutes later, another. "Answer me." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. It wasn't the words themselves. It was the urgency, the expectation. When Olivia came back and saw the messages, her face changed instantly. Not dramatically, but enough. She grabbed her phone, typed quickly, and forced a light laugh. "Sorry," she said to the table. "He just wanted to know where I was. Just wanted to know." But her fingers were still trembling slightly as she set the phone down. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling. So I did something I hadn't done in years. Something I had promised myself I wouldn't do again. I followed him. It wasn't planned. Not exactly. I had been driving home from the grocery store when I saw his car parked outside a building downtown, a place I didn't recognize. It wasn't his office. It wasn't a restaurant. It was quieter, more private. I hesitated. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. "You shouldn't do this. You already crossed this line once. You know what it cost you." But then I thought of Olivia, standing in that dress, smiling but not fully, and before I could stop myself, I pulled over. I parked across the street, far enough not to be obvious, but close enough to see. The building was older. Not run down, but not polished either. The kind of place that didn't draw attention. People came and went without looking twice. I waited. Minutes stretched into nearly an hour, and just when I started to doubt myself, he came out. Daniel. But he wasn't alone. The woman walking beside him wasn't Olivia. She was older, early 40s maybe, well-dressed, but not in the effortless way Margaret carried herself. This felt intentional, like she was trying to project something. Daniel leaned close to her as they spoke, his posture relaxed, confident, familiar, too familiar, the same way he had stood beside Olivia, the same tone of voice, the same calculated charm. My stomach twisted. They stopped near the curb, talking quietly, and then he touched her. Not casually, not politely, intimately, his hand brushing against her waist, lingering just a moment too long. The woman smiled, and just like that, everything in the envelope stopped being abstract. This wasn't past behavior. This was present, active, real. I felt my breath catch. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't something I could explain away. This was exactly what it looked like. I reached for my phone instinctively, my fingers fumbling slightly as I opened the camera. I didn't think. I just acted. I took a picture, then another. Proof. Clear. Undeniable. My heart was racing now, pounding so loudly I was sure I could hear it. Daniel stepped back, saying something I couldn't hear. The woman laughed softly, and then he walked away. Just like that, as if nothing had happened, as if he wasn't about to marry my daughter in a matter of days. I sank back into my seat, my hands shaking, because this changed everything, again. But this time, it wasn't just suspicion. It wasn't just documents. It was something I had seen with my own eyes. And yet, even with that doubt crept in, because I had been here before. Not exactly like this, but close enough. The last time I thought I had proof. The last time I believed I was right. I had destroyed something that mattered to Olivia, and she had never fully forgiven me for it. What if this looked worse than it was? What if there was an explanation? What if I showed her this, and she turned it against me? Accused me of spying, of invading, of doing exactly what she had begged me not to do. I closed my eyes, pressing my head back against the seat. This wasn't simple. Nothing about this was simple, because even if I was right, being right didn't guarantee she would believe me, and being right didn't mean I wouldn't lose her. Again. I opened my eyes and looked down at my phone, at the photos, at the evidence, and for the first time since this started, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not hesitation, clarity, because this wasn't about proving something anymore. It was about preventing something. And that required more than just one moment, more than just one image. I needed the full picture, the pattern, the undeniable truth. Because if I was going to step into Olivia's life again, if I was going to risk everything, I had to be certain. Absolutely certain. I started the car slowly, my mind already racing ahead. This wasn't over, not even close. If anything, this was just the beginning of something far worse than I had imagined. And somewhere deep down, I knew one thing for sure. Daniel Whitmore wasn't just hiding secrets. He was building something calculated, something dangerous. And Olivia was already inside it. The moment I pulled into my driveway, I didn't go inside. I just sat there in the car engine, still running hands, gripping the steering wheel as if letting go would make everything collapse. The photos were still open on my phone. Daniel, the woman, the way his hand rested on her waist like it belonged there. It wasn't just what I had seen. It was what it confirmed. The envelope hadn't been a warning based on the past. It was a warning about the present. And if that was true, then whatever Daniel was doing, he hadn't stopped. He'd just gotten better at hiding it. I turned off the engine and finally stepped out of the car, the quiet of the house wrapping around me like a weight. Inside the envelope was exactly where I had left it, waiting. I walked straight to the kitchen, spread everything out again, and added the photos beside the documents. Now for the first time, it felt complete, or at least closer to complete. But something still bothered me, a detail that didn't sit right. If this was real, if Daniel had a pattern of targeting women, then why send this to me? Why not go directly to Olivia? Unless... My chest tightened. Unless someone had already tried and failed. I picked up the document with Rachel Monroe's name again, reading it more carefully this time. The incomplete statement. The abrupt ending. I trusted him. He said we were building a future together. But then the accounts... It stopped there, like someone had cut her off, or she had stopped herself. Either way, it wasn't finished, and that meant there was more to the story. There had to be. I sat down and opened my laptop again, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Rachel Monroe. This time I searched differently, more specifically, more intentionally. I filtered locations, cross-referenced timelines, looked for anything that connected her to Daniel beyond the fragments I had. It took time, long enough for the afternoon light to fade into evening, but eventually I found something, a social media profile. Inactive, mostly, but not completely. There were older photos, smiling, confident, successful, and then nothing, a gap, a sudden absence. But there was one detail that caught my attention, a comment, left by someone else. Glad you're doing better. You deserve peace after everything he put you through. No name mentioned, no specifics. But I didn't need specifics. I already knew who he was. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just a story buried in documents anymore. This was a real person, alive, recovering, maybe even willing to talk. I hesitated for a moment before clicking the message button, because this was a line I couldn't uncross. Once I reached out, I couldn't pretend I wasn't involved. But I had already crossed that line the moment I opened the envelope, so I typed, carefully. Hi, Rachel. I know this may seem strange, but I believe we have a connection through someone named Daniel Whitmore. I'm trying to understand something important, and I would really appreciate if you could speak with me. I stared at the message, then pressed send. The silence that followed was unbearable, because now, all I could do was wait. Hours passed, no response. I checked my phone more times than I could count, each time hoping, then feeling that same small drop of disappointment. Maybe she wouldn't answer. Maybe she had moved on. Maybe she didn't want to reopen something painful. I couldn't blame her, but without her, I didn't have enough. Not yet. I was about to give up for the night when my phone buzzed. A message. My breath caught as I opened it. It was her. Rachel Monroe. I was wondering when someone would reach out, she wrote. My heart skipped. She knew. She had been expecting this. Who are you, she added. I typed quickly. My name is Kathryn James. My daughter is engaged to Daniel. There was a pause. Longer this time. Then another message appeared. I'm sorry, 2 words, but they carried so much weight. Can we talk, I asked? Her response came almost immediately. Yes, but not over text. She sent a number. I didn't hesitate. I called. It rang twice before she answered. Hello? Her voice was calm, too calm. Rachel, I said, yes. And you're Kathryn. It wasn't a question. Yes. There was a brief silence. Then she exhaled softly. I didn't think he'd get this far again. Again. The words sent a chill through me. What do you mean? I asked, my voice tightening. He always moves fast, she said. But this... An engagement already? That's faster than usual. My grip on the phone tightened. Rachel, I need you to tell me everything I said, please. There was another pause, and when she spoke again, her voice had changed. Less guarded, more tired. I met Daniel 3 years ago, she began. He was charming, successful, everything you'd want in a partner. I closed my eyes, listening. He made me feel safe, she continued, important. Like we were building something real together. The words echoed too closely to what I had seen with Olivia. He encouraged me to invest, she said we could grow our future faster if we worked as a team. My heart sank. The bank records, the transfers. I trusted him, she said quietly, so I gave him access. And then I asked, even though I already knew. He disappeared, she replied. Not completely, just enough. The accounts were drained, the business failed, and somehow everything was tied back to me. I felt a cold anger rise inside me. He made it look like I was responsible, she added. I almost lost everything. I swallowed hard. "Why didn't you report him? I tried," she said. "But he's careful. He never takes everything at once. He spreads it out, uses different methods. By the time you realize what's happening, it's too late." My mind raced. This wasn't just manipulation, it was strategy. "He's doing it again, isn't he?" she asked softly. I looked down at the photos on my table. "Yes," I whispered. "And your daughter. She's about to marry him." The silence on the other end was heavy. Then Rachel spoke again. "You need to stop this," she said firmly. "I know, but you need more than what you have," she added. "Because he'll deny everything. And if your daughter trusts him, she won't believe me," I finished. "No," Rachel said gently. "She won't." My chest tightened. "Then what do I do?" There was a pause. And when Rachel answered, her voice was steady. "You gather everything she said, every pattern, every connection, every lie." I looked at the envelope again, at the photos, at the pieces slowly coming together. And then I asked. And then she said, "You make it impossible for him to hide." I closed my eyes, taking in her words, because now for the first time, I understood the full truth. Daniel wasn't just a bad man. He was a system, a pattern, a carefully constructed illusion designed to trap people before they even realized what was happening. And Olivia was already inside it. But now, I wasn't alone anymore, and that changed everything. By the next morning, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I couldn't stay silent anymore, not after what Rachel had told me, not after what I had seen with my own eyes, and not when every piece of this puzzle pointed to the same terrifying truth. Daniel wasn't just deceiving Olivia, he was setting her up. Still, knowing what I had to do didn't make it easier, because this wasn't just about exposing him, it was about facing her and risking everything between us. Again. I called her. Not a text, not a casual message, a call. It rang longer than usual, each second stretching the tension tighter in my chest. When she finally answered, her voice was cautious. "Mom, Olivia, we need to talk." A pause. "What about—" I took a breath. "About Daniel." Silence, then a soft exhale. "I don't have time for this right now. You need to make time," I said more firmly than I intended. Another pause. Longer this time. "Fine," she said. "Come over. But make it quick." Her apartment was immaculate. Everything in its place. Everything controlled. Just like the life she was trying to build. Daniel wasn't there. For a brief moment, I was grateful, because this conversation was already going to be hard enough. Olivia stood near the kitchen counter, arms crossed, her expression guarded. "You have 10 minutes, she said, 10 minutes, to potentially destroy everything." I stepped forward, slowly placing my bag on the table. "I'm not here to argue," I said. "I just need you to listen." "I've heard this before," she replied flatly. "I know I said, but this is different." Her jaw tightened. "It's always different, Mom." I swallowed, because she wasn't wrong, but this time, it was. "I need you to look at something," I said, reaching into my bag. Her eyes narrowed immediately. "What is that?" "Just please. Look." She hesitated, then reluctantly stepped closer. I pulled out the photos first, placed them on the table. Her eyes dropped to them, and for a second, I saw it. Shock. Real unfiltered shock, but it didn't last. Her expression hardened almost instantly. "What is this?" she demanded. "I took them yesterday," I said. "That's Daniel. With another woman. That doesn't mean anything," she shot back. "Olivia. He has clients, business partners. You don't know who that is. That's not how he was touching her." "Stop," she snapped. Her voice was sharper now, louder. "You're doing it again." "I'm not making assumptions," I said quickly. "There's more." I pulled out the documents, the bank records, the legal fragments, Rachel's statement. I laid them out in front of her. "Please," I said, my voice softer now. "Just read them." She stared at the papers, didn't touch them, didn't move. "I'm not reading that," she said. "Why not?" "Because I already know what it is," she replied. "It's you, digging, investigating, finding things that fit the story you want to believe." "That's not what this is," I insisted. "It is," she said, her voice rising. "It's exactly what you did with Ethan." That name hit like a punch. "This is different," I said again. "No," she said, shaking her head. "It's not." Her eyes were shining now, not with fear, but with anger. "You always think you know better," she continued. "You always think you're protecting me, but all you ever do is take things away from me. I'm trying to save you," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I don't need saving," she shouted. The words echoed through the room. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she stepped closer to the table, grabbing the top document and glancing at it briefly. Her eyes flicked over the words. Then she threw it back down. "This is nothing," she said. "Half of this isn't even complete. There's no context, no proof." "There is proof," I said. "I spoke to someone, Rachel Monroe. She—" "Of course you did." Olivia interrupted, a bitter laugh escaping her. "You found someone to back you up. She's a victim, Olivia, or she's someone you convinced to tell you what you wanted to hear. That's not fair. What's not fair," she cut in, "is that you don't trust me enough to make my own decisions." "I do trust you," I said. "No, you don't," she replied immediately. "If you did, you wouldn't be standing here trying to tear apart my life 2 days before my wedding. I'm trying to protect you from someone who could hurt you." "You're hurting me," she said quietly. The shift in her tone hit harder than anything else, because it wasn't anger anymore, it was pain. Real, deep pain. "You think you're saving me?" She continued, her voice trembling now. "But all you're doing is reminding me why I stopped telling you things in the first place." I felt my chest tighten. "Olivia." "I told you," she said, stepping back, putting distance between us. "I told you not to ruin my life again. I'm not trying to ruin it." "But you are," she said. "You just don't see it." The room felt smaller, heavier, like the air itself had thickened between us. "I need you to leave," she said finally. The words were quiet, but final. I stood there for a moment, unable to move, because part of me had known this would happen, had feared it, but knowing didn't make it hurt any less. "Please," I said softly, "just think about it. Just look at everything again, without me here." She shook her head. "I'm done talking about this." I looked at her one last time, really looked, and there it was again. That flicker, that doubt, buried deep beneath everything else, but still there. She wasn't as certain as she wanted me to believe, and that meant there was still a chance. But not like this. Not through confrontation, not through force, because that would only push her further away. I gathered my things, slowly leaving the documents on the table. "I love you," I said quietly. She didn't respond. I walked to the door, my hand resting on the handle for a moment before I opened it, and just before I stepped out, I heard her voice again, soft, almost broken. "Why can't you just trust me?" I closed my eyes briefly, because the answer was something she wasn't ready to hear, and maybe something I wasn't ready to say. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, but as I walked away, one thought stayed with me. This wasn't over, because whether she believed me or not, the truth didn't change. Daniel was still dangerous, and Olivia was still in his reach, which meant I was running out of time. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. Driving felt mechanical, like my body was moving through motions my mind hadn't caught up with yet. Olivia's words kept replaying, each one sharper than the last. "You're hurting me. You're doing it again. Why can't you just trust me?" I gripped the steering wheel tighter, because the truth was I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe that she saw something I didn't, that Daniel was somehow different with her, that everything I had uncovered was just coincidence. But deep down, I knew better, and that certainty was what made this so unbearable. By the time I reached home, the sun had already started to dip below the horizon. The house felt colder than usual, emptier. I walked straight to the kitchen where the envelope had once sat, like a warning I hadn't fully understood. Now it felt like evidence I hadn't fully used. I stared at the empty space on the table for a moment. Then my phone buzzed. "Rachel, I'm in town," the message read, "if you want to meet." My heart skipped. This was it, the piece I had been missing, where I typed back immediately. She sent an address, a small cafe just a few blocks away. I didn't hesitate. The cafe was quiet, tucked between two larger buildings, the kind of place people passed without noticing. Rachel was already there. I recognized her instantly. Not because I'd seen many photos, there weren't many, but because there was something about her posture, guarded, like someone who had learned the hard way not to let her guard down. She stood as I approached. "Kathryn," she asked. "Yes?" We sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke, because there was no easy way to begin a conversation like this. Finally, she broke the silence. "She didn't believe you, did she?" I let out a slow breath. "No." Rachel nodded as if she had expected that. "They never do," she said quietly. Something in her voice made my chest tighten. "How did you get out?" I asked. She looked down at her hands for a moment before answering. "I didn't. Not at first. I waited. Because I could tell there was more. A friend stepped in," she continued. "Someone who noticed things I didn't. Who pushed when I didn't want to see the truth." Her eyes lifted to meet mine. "You're that person now." The weight of that settled over me immediately. "But I don't have enough," I said. "She thinks I'm just repeating the past." Rachel leaned back slightly, studying me. "Then you don't just show her," she said. "You show everyone." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, thicker than anything I had, more complete. She placed it on the table between us. "This is everything I kept," she said. "The things I didn't turn over, the things I knew I might need one day." My hands moved toward it almost instinctively. Inside were documents organized, labeled undeniable. Contracts, bank statements, email exchanges, and photos, more photos, Daniel with different women, different places, different times. But always the same pattern, the same closeness, the same illusion. "This is enough," I whispered. Rachel nodded. "It is, but timing matters." I looked up at her. "What do you mean if you confront him privately, he'll deny everything she said, he'll twist it, make you look like the problem?" "That's exactly what he's already doing," I said bitterly. "Then don't give him that chance," she replied. I felt a shift in the conversation, a direction. "What are you suggesting?" I asked slowly. Rachel held my gaze. "You expose him where he can't control the narrative." My stomach tightened. "The wedding," I said. She nodded once. "It's the one place he won't expect it, the one place where he has the most to lose." I leaned back in my chair, the weight of that idea settling over me. The wedding. Olivia's wedding. The day she had planned, dreamed about, fought to protect from me. "You're asking me to destroy it," I said quietly. "I'm asking you to stop him," Rachel replied. "That's not the same thing I said." "No," she agreed, "but it will feel like it." Silence fell between us again, because we both knew the truth. Stopping Daniel would come at a cost, and that cost would be Olivia, or at least her trust, again. "I don't know if I can do that to her," I admitted. Rachel's expression softened slightly. "You're not doing it to her," she said. "You're doing it for her." "I did something for her before," I said, and it broke us. Rachel didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached across the table and gently tapped the folder. "Then do it differently," this time she said. "Not from fear, not from control, from truth." I looked down at the folder again, at the evidence, at the undeniable reality of what Daniel was, and I realized something. This wasn't about being right anymore. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about making sure Olivia saw the truth before it was too late, even if she hated me for it, even if it cost me everything. "Will you be there?" I asked. Rachel nodded. "If you need me to be." I exhaled slowly, because that changed things. That made it real. "Okay," I said finally. Rachel didn't smile, didn't celebrate. She just nodded again as if acknowledging a decision she knew couldn't be taken back. "Then we need to prepare," she said. That night, back at home, I spread everything out again. My documents, her documents, the photos, the records, the pattern. For the first time, it wasn't scattered. It was clear, complete, unavoidable. I organized it carefully, chronologically, strategically, every piece placed where it would have the most impact. Because if I was going to do this, I couldn't afford mistakes. I couldn't afford doubt. And as I worked, one thought stayed with me. Olivia's face, her voice. "Don't ruin my life again." I paused, my hands resting on the papers, because the truth was, she was right to be afraid. What I was about to do would change everything. There was no version of this where things stayed the same, no version where we walked away untouched. But there was also no version where I stayed silent and lived with the consequences. So I kept going, piece by piece, preparing, because the next time I stood in front of her would be at her wedding, and when that moment came, there would be no turning back. The night before the wedding, I sat alone at my kitchen table, surrounded by the pieces of a life I was about to break apart or save. I still wasn't sure which. The folder Rachel had given me lay open in front of me, its contents now carefully organized into something undeniable. Dates aligned, names repeated, patterns visible in a way that no one, not even Olivia, could ignore if they truly looked. And yet, I knew she might not look. Not really, because believing the truth would cost her everything she thought she had built, just like it would cost me everything I had left of her. I leaned back in my chair, pressing my palms into my eyes, trying to push away the weight pressing down on my chest. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Not her wedding, not this moment. I had imagined it so many times over the years, walking beside her, fixing her veil, holding her hands as she told me she was ready, laughing, crying, sharing something that felt like closure after everything we had been through. Instead, I was here, planning how to stop it. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual, each second marking the narrowing distance between now and the moment everything would change. My phone buzzed. A message. Olivia. For a second, my heart leapt, hope rising instinctively. But when I opened it, that hope faded just as quickly. Rehearsal is at 10 tomorrow morning. Don't be late. No emotion, no softness, just expectation. I stared at the screen for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I could still stop this. I could show up, smile, say nothing, let her have her day, let her make her choice. And if I was wrong, even slightly, then everything would be fine. She would be happy. And I would have learned finally to let go. But if I was right, I closed my eyes, because that wasn't a risk I could take. Not with what I knew, not with what Rachel had shown me, not with the way Daniel had looked at that woman, like Olivia wasn't even a factor in his world. I typed a reply, "I'll be there." Then I set the phone down and pushed it away as if distance could quiet the storm inside me. The next morning came too quickly. I barely remembered going to bed, barely remembered sleeping. Everything felt like it was happening too fast and not fast enough at the same time. I dressed carefully, simple, neutral, not too formal, not too casual, because I didn't know what role I was walking into. Mother of the bride, or the woman who would stop the wedding. The drive to the venue felt surreal. The sky was bright, clear, almost painfully perfect, the kind of day people pray for when they plan something like this. And I wondered briefly if that was part of the illusion, too, if everything about this had been designed to look flawless, so no one would question what was underneath. The venue was already alive with activity when I arrived. Staff moving quickly, flowers being arranged, voices echoing softly through the space. It was beautiful, exactly what Olivia would have wanted, and that made it worse, because it meant she had poured herself into this, believed in it, trusted it, and I was about to tear it apart. I stepped inside, my eyes scanning the room instinctively. Daniel stood near the front, speaking with one of the coordinators. He looked calm, confident, completely at ease, as if nothing in the world could touch him, as if he already knew how this would end. For a brief moment, doubt flickered again. What if I was wrong? What if I had misread everything? What if this was all just a series of coincidences that I had turned into something bigger out of fear? But then I remembered the photos, the documents, Rachel's voice, and that doubt disappeared. Because this wasn't instinct anymore. It was evidence still. As I watched him, something else settled in. Not fear, not hesitation, resolve, because men like him relied on silence, on doubt, on people choosing comfort over confrontation, and I wasn't going to give him that. Not this time. "Mom!" Olivia's voice pulled me back. I turned. She stood a few steps behind me, already in her rehearsal dress. Simple, elegant, her hair pulled back, her makeup soft. She looked Tired. Not physically, emotionally, like someone holding themselves together with effort. "You're here," she said. "I told you I would be." She nodded, but her eyes searched my face, looking for something. Suspicion, confirmation. "I need to know something," she said quietly. My chest tightened. "What you're not going to do anything today are you." There it was. The question. The line she was drawing. I hesitated, just for a second, and that second was enough. Her expression hardened. "I knew it," she said. "Olivia." "You promised," she cut in. "You said you would drop it." I said, "For now," I replied carefully. "That's not the same thing," she said. "No," I admitted. "It's not." Her eyes filled not with tears, but with something heavier. Disappointment. "Why can't you just let me have this?" she asked. The question hit deeper than anything else, because it wasn't anger, it was pleading. "I want to," I said softly. "Then do it. I can't." The silence that followed was deafening. "Of course you can't," she said finally, her voice hollow. "Because you think you're the only one who knows what's best for me. That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" she demanded. I looked at her, really looked. And for a moment, I almost told her everything. Right there. Right then. But something stopped me. Because this wasn't the moment. Not yet. Not like this. "If I'm wrong," I said slowly, "then I will spend the rest of my life apologizing to you." Her brow furrowed. "But if I'm right," I continued, my voice barely above a whisper, "then this is the last chance I have to protect you." Her expression shifted. Just slightly. That flicker again. Fear. Real, undeniable fear. But it vanished just as quickly as it appeared. "I don't need protection," she said firmly. "Everyone does," I replied. "Not from you," she said. The words landed hard, but this time, they didn't shake me. Because I understood something now that I hadn't before. This wasn't about convincing her. Not yet. It was about making sure she would see the truth when it was in front of her. And that moment was coming. Soon. I stepped back, giving her space. "I'll be here," I said. She didn't respond. She just turned and walked away. And as I watched her go, one thought settled into place with absolute clarity. This was the last quiet moment before everything changed. Because tomorrow, there would be no more waiting. The morning of the wedding felt unreal, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. Everything moved around me in perfect coordination. Flowers being placed, chairs aligned, music-tested guests beginning to arrive in soft waves of color and quiet excitement. It was beautiful, too beautiful, because beneath all of it, I knew what was coming, and I was the one who would bring it. I arrived early, earlier than anyone expected, earlier than Olivia. I needed time to breathe, time to steady myself, time to remember why I was doing this. I walked through the venue, slowly taking everything in. The aisle lined with white roses, the arch at the front delicate and elegant, the seats filling gradually with people who believed they were here to witness something joyful. I stopped near the front, my fingers brushing lightly against the edge of a chair. This was supposed to be her moment, and I was about to take it from her. My chest tightened. For a second, I almost turned around, almost walked out, almost chose silence. Because silence would be easier, for her, for me, for everyone. But then I remembered Rachel's voice. Men like him rely on silence, and I stayed. Guests continued to arrive, voices filled the space, laughter echoed, and then Daniel appeared. He stood at the front, adjusting his jacket, speaking easily with a few guests, confident, relaxed, untouched. I watched him carefully, looking for something, anything, a crack, a sign. But there was nothing. He was exactly who everyone believed him to be, and that was what made him dangerous. Our eyes met briefly. He smiled, polite, controlled, as if we were just two people sharing a moment at a celebration, as if he didn't know, as if he didn't feel the shift in the air. I didn't smile back. "Mom," I turned. Olivia stood behind me, in her wedding dress. For a moment, everything else disappeared. She was breathtaking. The fabric flowed perfectly, catching the light in a way that made her look almost unreal. Her hair fell softly around her shoulders. Her makeup was flawless. She looked exactly like the future she had imagined. And my heart broke, because I knew what I was about to do to that future. "You came early," she said. "I needed to." She studied me, carefully. "You're still planning something," she said. Not a question, a statement. I didn't answer, because anything I said would only confirm it. Her jaw tightened. "I asked you not to do this," she said quietly. "I know, then why? Because I love you. Because I'm afraid. Because I've already lost you once, and I can't lose you again like this." But none of those answers felt enough. So I said the only thing that mattered, because I believe I'm right. Her eyes filled not with tears, but with something deeper. "Resignation, you always do," she said. Then she turned away and walked toward the bridal suite. Without looking back, the music began. Soft at first, then stronger. Guests took their seats. The ceremony was about to start. I felt my pulse in my throat, my hands cold despite the warmth of the room. This was it, the moment, the line I couldn't uncross. I reached into my bag, pulled out the envelope, the same one she had seen, the same one she had feared. And for a second, I hesitated. Because once I stepped forward, there would be no undoing it, no explanation that could soften it, no version of this where she didn't feel betrayed again. But then I thought of the photos, the documents, Rachel, the pattern, and I stepped into the aisle. Wait. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried, enough to cut through the music, enough to stop everything. Heads turned, conversations stilled, the officiant paused. Daniel's expression shifted just slightly, and Olivia, she froze. I walked forward slowly, the envelope held tightly in my hand. Each step felt heavier than the last. "Mom," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. There was fear in it now, real fear. "I'm sorry," I said softly. Then I turned to face everyone. "I know this isn't how this day was supposed to go," I began. "And I know what this will look like." Murmurs spread through the crowd, confusion, discomfort, tension. "But I can't stay silent," I continued. "Not when I know what I know." Daniel stepped forward, then his voice calm. "Kathryn," he said, "this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time I cut in." For the first time, his composure cracked, just slightly, but enough. I pulled the documents from the envelope, held them up. "These are records," I said. "Financial transfers, legal filings, evidence of a pattern." "Stop," Olivia said, her voice shaking. "Please," I said, looking at her. "Just listen." Daniel moved closer. "This is ridiculous," he said smoothly. "She's upset. She's been against this from the beginning." "And these," I interrupted, pulling out the photos. I held them out, clear, visible. The image of him with another woman, the intimacy, the undeniable truth. The room went silent, completely. Daniel's face changed, not dramatically, but enough. "What is that?" Olivia asked, her voice breaking. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She stepped forward, took the photo from my hand and looked at it. Really looked. Her fingers trembled, her breath hitched. "No," she whispered. Daniel stepped in quickly. "Olivia, that's not what it looks like." "Then what is it?" she demanded, turning to him. "It's business," he said. "A client." "That's not how you touch a client," I said. "Enough." He snapped, his voice sharper now. There it was, the shift, the mask slipping, and everyone saw it. "I told you," he continued, turning to Olivia. "She would try to do this. She's been looking for a way to sabotage us." Olivia looked between us, back and forth, torn, confused, hurt. "I spoke to Rachel Monroe," I said quietly. The name hit like a spark. Daniel's expression changed again. This time, he couldn't hide it. Just for a second, but it was enough. Olivia saw it. "I didn't think so," Daniel said quickly. "She's lying. She has everything I said. Contracts, records, proof. Anyone can fake documents," he shot back. "But not a pattern," I replied. Silence. Heavy, crushing. Olivia looked down at the photo again, then at the documents, then at Daniel. "Tell me the truth," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it held everything. Daniel hesitated. Just for a second, and that second was all it took. Because in that moment, she knew. And everything began to fall apart. For a moment, no one moved. It was as if time itself had paused, caught between what everyone thought this day would be and what it had suddenly become. Olivia stood in the center of it, all the photo still in her hand, her eyes locked on Daniel. "Tell me the truth," she said again. Her voice was steadier this time, stronger, but I could see it, the crack beneath it, the beginning of something breaking. Daniel exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair as if trying to regain control of a situation that had slipped just beyond his reach. "Olivia," he said, his tone softening again, almost pleading now, "you have to understand your mother is manipulating this. She's taken pieces of things and twisted them into something they're not." I felt the words hit, but I didn't react, because this wasn't about me anymore. This was about her. Olivia didn't respond right away. She looked down at the photo again, her fingers tightened around it. "Then explain it," she said. Daniel hesitated, and that hesitation, small as it was, spoke louder than anything else he could have said. "It's business," he repeated. "She's a client. We had a meeting." "And you touch all your clients like that," Olivia interrupted, her voice rising slightly. The room shifted again. People were no longer just watching. They were listening. Really listening. Daniel's jaw tightened. "You're taking this out of context." "Then give me the context," she said. Another pause. Another fracture in his composure. I saw it clearly now. The man who had seemed untouchable just minutes ago was unraveling. And Olivia saw it too. Her breathing quickened. Her eyes flicked briefly toward me, then back to him. "Is there anyone else?" she asked. The question hung in the air like a blade. Daniel blinked. "What? Anyone else?" she repeated. "Any other clients I should know about?" Her voice was quiet again, dangerously quiet. "No," he said quickly. "Of course not." But it was too quick, too automatic, and Olivia knew it. I stepped forward then, just enough to be heard. "There are others," I said. Daniel turned sharply toward me. "Stop," he snapped. I ignored him. "Different cities, different women, same pattern." "Enough," he shouted. The mask was gone now, completely. Gasps rippled through the room. Margaret Whitmore stood abruptly from her seat, her face pale but composed. "Daniel," she said sharply. "What is going on?" For the first time, he didn't have an answer. Not a controlled one, not a convincing one. Just silence. And that silence was louder than anything else. Olivia took a step back, then another, as if the man in front of her had suddenly become someone she didn't recognize. "Say something," she whispered. Daniel looked at her, really looked, and for a brief second I saw something in his eyes. Not love, not regret, calculation. He was trying to decide which version of the truth would save him. "Olivia," he said slowly, "I didn't want you to find out like this." My stomach dropped, because that was it. That was the moment, the line he couldn't step back from. Her breath caught. Find out what she asked. He hesitated again, then shook his head slightly as if resigning himself. "I've made mistakes," he said. Mistakes? The word felt small, insufficient. "I had relationships before you," he continued. "Complicated ones. Business and personal got mixed together. That's not what I asked," she said. Her voice was shaking now, but she didn't look away. "Are you still doing it?" she asked. Silence. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't have to, because his silence said everything. Olivia's face crumpled. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, like something inside her was collapsing in real time. "You lied to me," she said. "I was trying to protect what we have." "Don't," she cut in. "Don't say that." Her voice broke on the last word. "I trusted you," she whispered. And that was the moment everything truly shattered, because trust once broken doesn't make a sound, but you can feel it in the air, in the space between people, in the way everything changes. Daniel stepped forward, reaching for her. "Olivia, we can fix this." She pulled back instantly. "Don't touch me." The words were sharp, final, and something in Daniel's expression shifted again. Not regret, not guilt, annoyance, like this had become inconvenient, like she had become difficult. And that was the last piece she needed. I saw it in her eyes. The realization, the clarity, the truth. "You were using me," she said. Daniel didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to say. Margaret stepped in, then her voice controlled but urgent. "Daniel, say something." But he didn't. Because the illusion was gone, and without it, there was nothing left to defend. Olivia looked around the room, at the guests, at the decorations, at the life she had been about to step into, and then back at him. "I can't do this," she said. The words were quiet, but they carried. "I can't marry you." A collective breath seemed to release from the room, the tension shifting, breaking. Daniel's face hardened. "This is because of her," he said, pointing at me. "She's manipulated you." "No," Olivia said. She shook her head slowly. "This is because of you." For the first time, he looked uncertain, truly uncertain, because he had lost control, and he didn't know how to get it back. Olivia turned away from him, from everything, and walked down the aisle, not as a bride, but as someone leaving something behind, something that had almost destroyed her. I watched her go, my chest tight, my heart breaking for her, because this wasn't victory. It wasn't relief. It was loss. Raw, immediate, and necessary. Daniel stood there alone now, exposed, the room no longer on his side, the illusion completely gone, and for the first time, he looked exactly like what he was. Not powerful, not charming, just empty. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to, because the truth had already done what I couldn't. It had reached her, even if it broke her in the process. I didn't follow her right away. I wanted to. Every instinct in me screamed to go after her, to hold her, to tell her it was going to be okay, even though I knew it wasn't. Not yet. But something stopped me. Because for the first time in a long time, this wasn't about me rushing in to fix things. It was about giving her space to feel what she needed to feel, even if that meant standing still while she walked away. The room slowly began to empty behind me. Guests murmured in low voices, their confusion turning into quiet understanding. Chairs scraped softly against the floor as people gathered their things, unsure of what to say, unsure of how to leave. Margaret Whitmore was the first to break the silence. "This is outrageous," she said sharply, her composure returning in fragments. "You've humiliated this family." Her eyes locked onto me. Blame, cold and precise. But this time, I didn't flinch. "Your son did that himself," I replied calmly. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't respond, because even she had seen it. The moment the truth became undeniable. Daniel had already left, slipped out quietly while the attention was elsewhere. Of course he had. Men like him never stayed for consequences. They moved on, found the next opportunity, the next target, but not this time, not with Olivia. I stepped outside, the sunlight hitting me like a sudden contrast to everything that had just happened inside. The world hadn't changed. Cars still passed. People still moved along the sidewalks. Everything was normal. Except it wasn't. Because somewhere nearby, my daughter was breaking. And this time, I didn't know if she would let me be there for it. I spotted her near the side of the building, sitting on a low stone ledge, still in her wedding dress, still holding on to something that no longer existed. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, her hands clenched in her lap. For a moment, I just stood there, watching. Because this wasn't the same Olivia who had walked down that aisle. This was someone who had just seen her entire future collapse in front of her, and I had been the one to trigger it. I took a slow breath, then stepped forward, carefully, like approaching something fragile. "Olivia." My voice was soft, tentative. She didn't look up immediately, and for a second I thought she might tell me to leave, to go away, to disappear like she had before. But then she spoke. "You were right." The words were quiet, almost lost in the air between us. I stopped, because I hadn't expected that. Not so soon, not like this. "I'm sorry," I said gently. She let out a soft, broken laugh. "You're sorry." She looked up at me then, and the expression in her eyes, It wasn't anger. It wasn't blame. It was something deeper, something heavier. "I just called off my wedding," she said, "in front of everyone, because the man I was about to marry," her voice faltered, "wasn't who I thought he was." My chest tightened painfully. "I know. And you're sorry," she repeated. There was no accusation in it, just disbelief. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," I clarified, "not for telling you the truth." She held my gaze for a long moment, as if trying to decide what to do with me now, who I was to her now. "I didn't want to believe you," she admitted. "I know, I needed it to be wrong," she said, "because if it wasn't, then everything I chose, everything I trusted." Her voice broke completely this time. "It was all a lie." I stepped closer, slowly. "I didn't want to take that away from you," I said. "I just didn't want you to lose more than that." Tears slipped down her cheeks now quietly, without resistance. "I thought you were doing it again," she whispered, "trying to control me, trying to decide for me." I swallowed. Part of me was, I admitted, not in the same way, but I was still afraid, still trying to protect you the only way I knew how. She looked down at her hands. "I hated you for that," she said. The words landed softly, but they still hurt. "I know," I said, "and I think," she continued, her voice shaking slightly, "I think I've been holding on to that for a long time." I nodded, probably longer than either of us realized. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable, just honest. "I never told you how much it hurt," she said. "What you did with Ethan." My chest tightened again. "I know. No," she said, looking up at me. "I don't think you do." I didn't interrupt, because this was what mattered. "He trusted me," she said, "and I trusted him. And when you exposed that, it didn't just end things. It made me feel like I couldn't have anything of my own without you stepping in." Her words were steady now, clear, and I told myself I would never let that happen again, she continued, that I would make my own choices no matter what. I nodded slowly. "That makes sense." "And this time," she said, her voice softening, "I ignored things, signs, feelings, because I didn't want to admit that you might be right." The honesty in that moment felt fragile, but real. "I didn't want to be the person who needed saving," she added. I stepped closer again, just enough to be within reach. "You're not," I said gently. She shook her head slightly. "But you saved me anyway." The words hung between us, heavy, meaningful. And then she looked at me differently, not as the woman who had interfered, not as the person who had hurt her, but as someone who had been there, all along. "You didn't ruin my life," she said quietly. My breath caught. "You saved it." The words hit deeper than anything else she had said, because they didn't erase the past, but they changed how we stood in it. I reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, to stop me, but she didn't. She leaned forward instead, and just like that, we were holding each other, tightly, desperately, like we were both trying to make up for years of distance in a single moment. "I'm so sorry," she whispered against my shoulder. "For what?" "For not listening," she said, "for pushing you away, for thinking the worst of you." I shook my head slightly. "I gave you reasons to feel that way," maybe she said, "but you never stopped loving me." "No," I said softly, "I didn't." We stayed like that for a long time, not saying anything, not needing to, because for the first time in years, we weren't fighting, we weren't pulling in opposite directions, we were just there, together. And as I held her, I realized something. This wasn't the end of what had happened. It wasn't the end of the pain. But it was the beginning of something we hadn't had in a long time. Understanding, and maybe, if we were careful, healing. The weeks after the wedding felt quiet. Not empty, not broken, just still. Like everything had been shaken so violently that the only thing left to do was let the dust settle. Olivia stayed with me for a while. At first, it wasn't a decision we talked about. She just showed up 2 days after the wedding, a small suitcase in her hand, her eyes tired but clearer than I had seen them in months. "Can I stay here for a bit?" she asked. And for the first time in a long time, there was no distance in her voice, no hesitation. "Of course," I said. I didn't ask how long. I didn't ask why, because I already knew. She needed space. And maybe she needed me again. The first few days were quiet. We moved around each other carefully, like we were both afraid of breaking something fragile that had just started to mend. We didn't talk about Daniel, not at first. We didn't talk about the wedding or the past. We just existed in the same space, shared meals, watched TV, sat in silence that didn't feel heavy anymore, just unfamiliar. But slowly, things began to shift. One evening, as we sat in the living room, Olivia spoke. "I keep replaying it," she said. I turned toward her. The moment she continued, when everything changed, when I looked at him, and I knew. I nodded slowly. "That moment stays with you," I said. She exhaled softly. "I keep thinking, how did I not see it sooner?" There it was. The question that always comes after the truth, the one that hurts the most. "Because you trusted him," I said gently. She looked down at her hands. "I wanted it to be real," she admitted. "I know. And I think..." She hesitated, then continued. "I think I wanted to prove something too. To me," I asked softly. She nodded. "That I could make my own choices. That I didn't need you to protect me." Her honesty didn't hurt. Not this time. Because I understood it. "I made it hard for you to feel that way," I said. She shook her head slightly. "No," she said. "You made mistakes, but I held on to them longer than I should have." We sat with that for a moment. Not as blame, not as guilt, just truth. And now I asked. She looked up at me. Her expression was different, stronger. "I think I need to learn how to trust myself again," she said. I smiled softly. That's a good place to start. Time moved forward, not in big dramatic moments, but in small, steady steps. Olivia found a therapist, not because she was broken, but because she wanted to understand herself better. She went back to work, rebuilt her routine, her independence, but this time, it felt different. Not like she was trying to prove something, but like she was choosing something. And me, I learned too. I learned how to step back without stepping away, how to listen without immediately trying to fix, how to trust her, even when it scared me. It wasn't easy. There were moments when the old instincts came back, when I wanted to ask too many questions, when I wanted to step in before she asked for help. But I stopped myself, because this time, I understood something I hadn't before. Love doesn't mean control. It means presence and trust. One afternoon, a few months later, we sat together at a small cafe, the same kind of quiet place where everything feels a little more honest. Olivia stirred her coffee absently, then looked up at me. "I saw Ethan last week," she said. My heart skipped slightly. "Oh, it wasn't a big thing," she added quickly. "We just ran into each other." I nodded, waiting. "He's doing well," she said. "Happy, stable." I could hear the unspoken question in her voice, and I answered it before she had to ask. "I shouldn't have handled that the way I did," I said. "I thought I was protecting you, but I took your choice away." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "I know." There was no anger in it, no resentment, just understanding. "And I'm not the same person I was back then," she added. "I know," I said, "and neither are you." That made me smile. "No," I agreed. "I'm not." She leaned back in her chair, a small smile forming. "I think we're both learning. I think we are too." That evening, as we walked back to the car, the sun setting in soft colors around us, Olivia slipped her arm through mine, a simple gesture, one she hadn't done in years, and it meant everything. "I'm glad you didn't stay silent," she said suddenly. I looked at her. "Even if I hated you for a moment," she added with a small laugh. "I was prepared for that." I admitted. She smiled. "I know." We walked a few more steps in comfortable silence. Then she spoke again. But next time she said, glancing at me, "Maybe we try talking before things explode." I laughed softly. "That sounds like a good plan." She squeezed my arm lightly, and in that moment, It didn't feel like we were fixing something broken. It felt like we were building something new, stronger, more honest, more real. That night, as I sat alone in my living room, I thought back to everything that had happened. The envelope, the fear, the moment I thought I would lose her forever, and the moment she told me, "You didn't ruin my life. You saved it." I realized something then. Saving someone doesn't always look like rescue. Sometimes it looks like risk. Like standing in the middle of everything and choosing truth, even when it hurts. Even when it costs you. Because love, real love, isn't about being right. It's about being there, no matter what. Sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is knowing when to step in and when to step back. As parents, we want to protect. We want to shield our children from pain, from mistakes, from heartbreak. But there's a fine line between protecting and controlling, and crossing it can cost us the very relationship we're trying to preserve. Kathryn learned that love without trust can feel suffocating. Olivia learned that independence without awareness can be dangerous. And together they discovered something deeper, that true connection isn't about always agreeing, but about being willing to listen, to grow, and to forgive. The truth is, we won't always get it right. We'll say the wrong things, make the wrong choices, hurt the people we love even when we don't mean to. But what matters is what we do after. Do we close off, or do we come back open, honest and willing to rebuild? If you've ever been in a situation where love and trust collided, where you had to choose between speaking up or staying silent, I'd love to hear your story. What would you have done in Kathryn's place? Have you ever had to rebuild trust with someone you love? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might help someone else feel less alone.